Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast. I'm super excited today because I have a very special guest. Joined today by Miss Shavontana Starr Davis, and I call her Starr, and she truly is a star. And as you get to know her a little bit better, I know you will feel the same. I got to meet Starr several years ago, but the reason I wanted to have her come on join us on the podcast today, I know she has a lot of wisdom and insight, and she just released her first book called The Abuse Algorithm. So I want to dig into some of the details and let her speak to that and share about that. But just a little bit about Starr. Starr was sexually abused at a very young age, at the age of 7, and that left her feeling very paralyzed and confused and ashamed. And she remained silent about it for nearly 2 decades, not knowing how to deal with that issue. And then she didn't have access to programs or to support her or anything like that. And it wasn't until she had a heart to heart with her grandmother and she learned the power of choosing joy. And she's gone on after that choice and that very life-changing decision to found the Starr Institute. So I want to hear all about that and let her share some details on that and how she's impacting lives all over the country in different ways and different states, and really, truly tackling the topic of abuse head on. Starr, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ria. Thank you for having me. This is such an honor and such a privilege. And I just want to say thank you because I truly admire you and your work. And you're just an awesome person. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm just glad to have you. Excited just because it's been I don't even know when we met. It's been several years ago.
Yeah.
And I've really gotten to know you more working with you with some of the work that we do with the state task force on human trafficking and some of the sessions that we've done for survivors and things like that. And it's just been great to get to know you better. And then when you just released your book, I was so excited to get to read it just over the weekend. So it was so timely. So just jumping in right away, talk a little bit about the book because I know this was a big project for you.
Yeah. So if I'm being honest, this book has probably been inside of me probably almost my entire life, right? But it just wasn't the right time to write it. And as a child, I used to write all the time. I love to write, I love to read, but I would be writing about life. And so then life got really hard. And so then I put a hard stop to writing. And so, it was the good old pandemic. And it's like, this pandemic hasn't been, it's been bad. Clearly, we've lost a lot of lives, but it's also been a time that we could actually sit down, pause, and really reflect on what's important. And I was on LinkedIn. I saw this program called the Creators Institute. And this was a professional talking about, she had written her book. And I was like, oh, deep dive. Let me go see what this is all about. And it's been amazing because, as you know, you are an author and have written several books. I'm trying to get on your level. It is a lot, right? But it's a lot of research. It's a lot of interviews. And so I said, I have this inside of me and I want to get it out. And it was funny because at first I was just thinking, oh, my story, but it was so much more than me. This issue is always so much more than the person who is directly affected. And so being able to pull in other men, other women, and I'm talking about, this is a global issue. So we have someone from Guatemala, from New Zealand, all over, right? Male, female, like this is something that affects us all. And the unifying thing is that oftentimes we're going through this in silence and in silos, and nobody knows. And it's just like, you know what? Enough of that, right? Enough of that. The world has set up this patriarchal hierarchy of, what's right and what's wrong and these things. And you want us to be quiet about, things that when people are really hurting and it's just too much. So I was just like, I'm going to talk about this. And what I started to realize is when I talked about it, other people was like, well, it happened to me too. And you know what, this, and you know what, that. And so for me, and I say this in the book, I'm speaking for survivors who are known and unknown, whether they want to speak or whether they don't want to speak. It's their choice. But I'm going to speak up for us because there's always going to be someone who can't do it. They haven't found their voice. So they might not want to, but at least they know that they're not alone in what they are experiencing and how they're feeling.
Yeah, I love that because as you're all too familiar with, one of the things that I like to just say is that as long as we aren't willing to talk about hard issues, we're not ever going to be able to solve them, right? It's having
Absolutely.
those hard conversations. And just like you and I know, until we own our story, it's going to own us. And so I feel like we give it more power if we shove it up in a closet. And what I love is the very first, it's not even to the dedication really, but the very first page in the book where you're getting into the book, it says, I'm not working to educate, engage, and empower youth and the community about child sexual abuse and exploitation from a place of passion, but one of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that because a lot of times we talk about being passionate about what we do, but it's interesting because you're talking about I'm not just passionate about this, but I am doing this with a purpose, right? And I think it kind of goes back to purpose-driven life, living and working from a place of purpose. And that matters. I mean, yes, we're passionate about helping people, but when we're doing it with purpose, that means that we're focused and we're intentional and we're making a greater impact. So I just wanted to say I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And just so you know, when I was a child going through all of the different things, I would be like, oh my gosh, why me? Like, why is this that? Like, what did I do to deserve this? And now on the other side, I don't ask that question anymore because now I know I was able to overcome this because it's bigger than me. It's always bigger than us. It is because I was supposed to be able to help other people. So this is what I'm purposed to do. Yes,
Mm.
it's good to write a book. It's good to have the Starr Institute. All of those things are great. But what I am purposed to do is to let people know that we are going to experience some really hard times in our lives and you're not alone. And I want to be there with you as you go through those steps in your process, in your journey. That's what the purpose is, right? We can't get all into the accolades and credentials and all of that. Help
Mm.
people who have experienced this. That's the purpose, to let them know that you can make it through. And hey, if you want me to be here to help you get through that, I'm here for that.
Yeah, I think that is so important because I know for a long time after I left home, I didn't want to talk about my story. I didn't talk about it, but I also didn't want to read other people's stories. Like I was just not in a place of even acknowledging the pain and the shame there. And I didn't want to read other books. And then when I started to, it was really only after I started sharing my story publicly and I started reading other people's stories and books and then it was incredibly healing because it was like, wow, like there were so many similarities, there were so many of the same things, experiencing the same feelings, and so it was really incredibly helpful. Of course, there again, none of us want to experience painful memories or triggers or go back, but sometimes going back is the only way we can resolve it so that we can go forward, and having that person who's willing to talk about it is so powerful, I think. So what made me cry in the book was when you talked about your grandmother. Um,
My baby.
yeah. You want to share just a little bit about her and your special, obviously very special relationship with her?
Yeah. So my angel, I've always called her my angel. I do have my angel Maxine tattooed on my back. In February, actually, her birthday is on Friday. And February 2020, we lost her. So she really
Mm.
transitioned into becoming my real angel. And she just, she saved my life. She understood that my mom, her daughter, was going through a rough time and she took me in. And when I tell you that grandma was just the picture of grace and selflessness, and I'm telling you, I don't think she ever complained, ever. And she had every reason to, but she was steadfast in her faith in God. And I learned that from her. And so many other things. Like I didn't even realize that she was an entrepreneur at the time. I would always joke and say, like, I'm loud, I'm outgoing, I'm the life of the party. And my grandma is so not that, very quiet, conservative, meek. And I would always be like, yeah, but no, when I sit and think about it, I am a lot like her in more ways than not. And I didn't even realize it. She's a forgiver. So am I. She is, she's always going to see the good in everybody, right? And my husband tells me, like, you're loyal to a fault. And I'm like, I just want to see the good in people. It's there. Sometimes it's buried down, but it's there. And so anything that I've ever wanted to do in life, she was always like, you can do it. You need to pray about it, and then you need to go to work. You need to do what you're supposed to do. And she always encouraged me. I could have told her I wanted to travel to the moon, and she would have supported that, right? And so before I even knew that there was like this entire Harvard study that says the reason kids are resilient is because they have one, stable parent relationship, an adult relationship. I never even knew that factually. I just knew that because that's what grandma was to me. And so, I mean, she's been there, and we were the first grandchildren, my big brother and I, and we were the only grandchildren for a really long time. And so I was a granny's baby, and she's been everything in my life up until her passing. Right. Yeah. And not every child gets that. And it's just so important. It's so important. And I'm thankful. I miss her like crazy every day. I still talk to her. But I know that I was blessed to have her for as long as I did, and absolutely. To have experienced that love.
Yeah. And obviously she's just a special lady. You can just see her light shining through you. And, one of the things that we know is that when our sense of identity is ruptured after going through trauma or abuse, that we have to rebuild it. And one of the three things that's key in rebuilding that is the social support that we have around us. And you can see that her impact on you. Obviously the title of the podcast is Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, because I believe that women in general, struggle with a sense of self-worth and self-love. But that's the foundation to self-care and self-discipline and self-development. And talk a little bit about, and maybe it wasn't just, Miss Maxine, but how you kind of came into that realization of your sense of self-worth and potential.
Well, I think for me, because of everything, when I was a child, I was very laser focused. I was like, it's God and my career. That's how I'm getting out of here. School, I'm focusing on this. Those were things that I knew how to control. I knew that I could only depend on God. And I knew that if I worked hard, I would be able to do what I needed to do, right? And so I think that for me, a long time, I didn't deal with not loving myself and not feeling worthy. I didn't deal with that because I'm like, I don't need to deal with that. I'm going to deal with what I can control and what I can focus. And I think what really started to happen is because, most people will say, you're being promiscuous or what have you. But I would, if I was with a man, it was simply just that. It was something that I felt like I could control because my sense of worth and how to love that was connected with that sexual experience, right? But at least I was saying, well, I'm doing it on my own terms. I'm seeing him when I want to see him. I'm doing what I want to do. And, that was just all warped, right? And then when I finally got in a relationship with my husband, and now we've been married, it's a new year. It's going on 13 years, right?
Congrats.
Thank you. And we've been together for going on 17 years. And I did not know how to receive that from him. I did not think that I'm thinking, my own parents can't be here for me. How can I trust that this man wants to be here? I'm all used up. I don't know how to do it. And so every time we would get close, I would be like, I need a break. And I mean, I was full on trying to sabotage that relationship because I didn't know how to receive it. And so it just took, I will tell you honestly, it was before we had our first child, our son David. So he just turned 8 in December, and I wouldn't have kids. I wouldn't have kids because I'm like, I'm not going to mess up someone else's life or let them down or not be there for them. And so it took me a really long time. And then I really had to go inside of myself, and I really had to forgive myself. I think I was holding on so much. So I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive my parents. I had to forgive my abusers. I had to let all of that go. Right. And it took till I was 30 years old to finally even come up with that, because I'm like, I'm not bringing a child into this world like that. Now, am I totally healed? I don't think we'll ever be that way. I think we learn healthy tips to cope and learn how to manage our triggers and different things like that. But I'm in a space where I can receive that, because I couldn't even imagine what I would have if I had a child before then. I wouldn't be able to give them what they need, right? Not food, clothes, and shelter. I'm talking about that love that you need, that nurturing that you need. And so I think it was just, just a gradual process, and really just working it and going to therapy and really like saying, I am not the worst thing that I have done. I am not this. I know I've done these things. I know these things were done to me, but that is not who I am, right? That is just something that I've experienced. And I had to get to a place where I could separate my experience from who I was.
I love that. And you know what? It's interesting, and you've said it a couple of times already, is you've said, I had to put the work in. I had to put the work in. Like I have my goals, but I had to put the work in. And I love that, because I think one of our limiting beliefs is we think the world owes us something. We think somebody else is going to give us our dream or our career or the relationship that we want, or we think somebody else should do it. And neither one of those things are true. It's great to have goals and dreams and recognize potential, but we do have to put the work in to achieve those. And so I love that about you. And you are, I know you're a hard worker, because I know you are an attorney and you have founded the Starr Institute, which keeps you pretty busy, it sounds like.
Yeah, it does. And I'm thankful. The Starr Institute, it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, started back in 2017. And as a child, I only disclosed the abuse to my best friend. And she was a kid too. And I was like, don't tell anybody, right? She kept my secrets. Some secrets aren't meant to be kept. But I made a vow to her and myself that night, like, I'm going to help girls when I grow up, right? And so I just got out here, and I was working as a public defender in Fulton County in Atlanta, Georgia, primarily in Superior Court, representing adults. But it was when I went down to juvenile court, and I had a client going over the police report with her, and she was 15, being raised by her grandmother, parents not there. I'm seeing myself. I'm talking to young Starr. And I asked her how she knew the man in the police report. And she basically, said she knows him from when she used to, was in the life, but she doesn't do it anymore. And I was like, it is so time for me to go. And then when I got out here, I had these lofty dreams that are still dreams, but you got to start small. I still want to be able to have homes for youth who are trafficking survivors. But I started to realize that, people don't even know how this is working. People aren't even using the correct anatomical terms for body parts when talking to kids. People aren't having discussions about puberty with their kids. It's all these things that kids are out here learning by themselves, and that shouldn't be the case. Or the internet, which can be really bad sometimes,
Yeah.
So I wanted to create a space to be to kids what my grandma was to me, which is a safe haven. So you go there to be able to get knowledge. You go there to be, if you need a safe space to go to get a meal, that is a hub. So that is what we are creating. We are educating them using our workshop series, but we're also being that space. We want to walk alongside you with the journey. And now it's no longer girls, it's youth 12 to 17, boys, girls, no matter how they identify, right? This is a place where you can come to just be you. We meet you where you are. And that is so important because, we really do live in a world that they're bombarded with all of this messaging, and so much of it is negative and it impacts them, right? The very essence of who they are. And I want them to know how much potential they have and how important they are and how worthy they are. So that is what we do at the Starr Institute.
I love it. I love it. And I saw something really cool on your Instagram feed. Just a couple weeks ago, that you had been nominated as the L'Oreal Women of Worth. Tell us about that, because that sounds super exciting.
Yes. So L'Oreal Paris has a program called Women of Worth. It's been around for about 16 years, and that is their philanthropic arm. So basically, what they do is, and I love it, right? Because L'Oreal Paris is $1 billion industry, corporation,
Yeah.
right? But they could have just picked one or, one cause to get behind. But what they have done is every year, for the past 16 years, they pick 10 organizations, women-led nonprofit leaders who might not otherwise get recognized, right? So we receive funding, we receive mentorship. And then for the past 2 years, they've had the Women of Worth NBC special. I'm talking prime time, girl. I was like, oh, you get use of their global platform, right?
Wow.
And so it's so amazing. And so all 10 of the organizations receive $20,000. And then when they open it up to the public, then one woman she will be named the national honoree, and then her organization will receive an additional $25,000. But it was amazing. They took us to Paris, they took us to New York for an educational summit.
Wow.
And then the connections that you are able to build and maintain with L'Oreal Paris and with the women who were in our cohort and those before us. It was just phenomenal. I mean, I was floored and thankful to be in the presence of such amazing women, so thankful for that opportunity.
How timely do you feel like that opportunity was, with you coming out with this book and where you are in your purpose and passion? And talk a little bit about that. Like, is this opportunity, because I like to talk about, we have to be the person who can do the things we want to do, right? We have to become that person in order to achieve those goals. Is that something that resonates with you? Are you experiencing that?
Absolutely. So I think that the timing was all God, right? I couldn't have made this up, but the Starr Institute will turn 5 next month on the 7th. And it's been a steady process, right? And to your point about always having to put in the work, right? I'm putting in the work, and it might be that I've written a workshop series and not that many people have taken it now. And I'm just getting out here with, different speaking engagements, but I'm still putting in the work because my mindset is you have to be ready. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So when I was nominated for that, I had my pieces together, right? And it was all God then picking me, but I had the business to be able to show them, right? I had the things. And then they also look at you as a woman, right? Who are you as a woman? And that thing is so important. And I always laugh and say, oh, women of worth. And I laugh about it because I said, if they would have tried to give me that award 8 years ago, I would have been like a fraud because I wasn't in a space of loving myself and actually forgiving myself and have moved on. And that's such a big part of what it is. And I think that sometimes we don't want to do the work to get past the pain, right? We don't want to do the work. Sometimes you do have to minister inside the pain. It happens, right? But you got to do the work to get out of it. It's so easy to stay in that world and be mad and no, right? But let's do the work to get out. And so I think that it was timely because it also came at a time, you know, in these past 2 years, my family has experienced a lot of death, and none of it is COVID related, but it was very traumatic, the deaths that we experienced. And so it was a little bit of a breath of fresh air also, just kind of like, hey, keep going. You know, we just need it. Sometimes we need a little pick me up. So it definitely was a pick me up at a very sad time in my personal life.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. You mentioned earlier about it. You felt like it really took you until you were 30 to really, you know, overcome some of the traumatic experiences from your youth and step into that feeling of self-worth. And then it's like, and I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but it's almost like once you made that transition and then you started stepping forward in your purpose, then this nomination comes down and really just kind of confirms your sense of self-worth. And like, you are, look at the work you're doing, and you are a woman of worth, as we all are, right? But it's recognizing that and saying, you know what, God has created us and destined us for a purpose, and he doesn't cause the pain in our lives, but he can use it when we build on that. So I love that. That is just phenomenal. Exciting stuff. You've got so much going on, Starr. So the name of your book is The Abuse Algorithm. Tell us where we can, tell the listeners where we can find it, or how they can reach you, how they can get in touch with you, all of that good stuff.
So you can find the book on Amazon. All you have to do is put in The Abuse Algorithm or put in my name. It's on Ingram Spark as well as Kobo, and that's Kobo. And then you can find me on my website at the Starr with 2 R's, institute.org. Or you can also find me at Shavontana'StarrDavis.com. Again, that's Starr with 2 R's. And then, of course, we're on Instagram at the Starr Institute _. We're on Facebook at the Starr Institute. And then I'm on LinkedIn and personal Facebook as Shavontana Starr Davis.
All over the place, making wonderful things happen. It is so good to talk to you and just hear of some of the work that you're having and the impact. Thank you, Starr, for your insights and just sharing a little bit about your personal journey and stepping into that purpose. And, you know, I love all of the things that you got going on. So thank you for your time and sharing a little bit about your story with the listeners of the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor. Thank you.
I look forward to seeing what's the next chapter in the Starr story.
Me too.
Take care.
All right, you too.